Hi, friends. Good evening, all of you. First of all, thank you for joining this session. And this is our third CPD on contracts management. Behalf of QServe consultant, I'm welcoming all of you to the third CPD which we're conducting. A quick introduction about QServe. So, QServe consultant is focused on empowering your journey towards MRICS. As a quantity service and contract managers or cost managers, our aim is to ensure to enhance your knowledge and obtain MRICS. A word about myself. I am Mithun Suvarnan. I am a chartered quantity surveyor with MRICS, MIQS, and CPP certification creation. I'm working as a group manager with contracts and procurement with one of a developer in UAE. I'm not wasting much of time in introduction and those things. Let us directly go to the topic. So this is, as I said, this is the third CPD on contracts review and risk management, all of things. So in first CPD, we explain about the basics of contracts. In second CPD, we explain how to review contracts. And in review parts, there was a topic about risk management. As we promised, we are here conducting a separate section for the risk management. Let us see what is risk and how it impacting the project, all those things I'm going to explain here. So basically, I'm at our agenda for this CPD. I'm going to explain what is a risk, not just the definition of risk, the impact of risk, type of risk, all those things that we're going to explain. Then we will explain you how we will identify the risk and how we assess the risk. And at the last, we're going to explain the process, how you're going to mitigate those risks. This is the main agenda of this section. Let us see what is a risk and how it impacts, how it's connected to the concession, and how to mitigate those things. Let us see. So, what is risk? So, when you heard a word risk, if you think a risk like a physical accident or a risk something like a like a theft or a accident in a vehicle, I mean in a way that all risk. But now here we going to discuss about the risk in construction. So if you ask me a definition of a risk, any adverse event that will adversely impact the project is a risk for us. If I'm traveling in a car, if I go hit another car, that's a risk. That's an accident. That's a risk in a physical life. If similarly, in construction also, there are many risks which is categorized to different domains. And as a contracts or a quantity surveys, it's very important we analyze those risks from the very initial stage. We know that when you traveling in a car, you have to wear a safety belt. Safety belt is important so that that will protect you from a potential hit or impact. Similarly, when you identify those risks, we can take some action to, to manage those risks. That is the risk in concession. So if I tell you from a very high level, anything that impact the project in an adverse manner, and that will cause a cost impact, a time impact, or any damages, plus any reputational damage also will be fall under risk. So it's not just a physical risk or not just a contractual risk. Because of some event, if your reputation is being damaged, that also fall under risk. Okay, let us see what are the types of risk. When we see types of risk, that will help you to understand, or when you open a contract, that will help you to see how to assess those risks. And let's see the type of risk in a contract. Okay, there are I've classified the risk into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 categories here, which is financial and commercial risk, contractual risk, legal and regulatory risk, operational risk, technical risk, environmental and social risk, political risk. So guys, if you have a contract in your hand, Your mind should scan for these risks inside the contract, be it a pre-contract or a post-contract. You have to make sure your contract is free from risk, or at least you have to ensure you identify those risks and you are ready with some mitigation or management mechanism. So in the pre-contract stage, when you receive a contract, that means when you receive an RFP, or if you're a contracts manager, if you are a director giving you a contract to review, your mind should be ready to analyze these risks inside the contract. When you scan the contract, you should pick these points. Okay, this is a commercial risk, this is financial risk, this is a legal risk, this is the operational risk, and you have to notify your manager, dear manager, these risks are there in the contract. So we to be very careful. Since these risks are there, we have to mitigate also. So let me first explain what is financial and commercial risk. Guys, in a construction project, the blood is money. So anything deal with money is a financial and commercial risk. It could be a cost overrun. It could be a cash flow issue. It could be an unpaid in issue. Could be a financial reputation of the client. It could be your financial status also. It could be anything, but you have to identify those financial and commercial risk. Let me give you some example in both pre-contract and post-contract. Okay, so as a pre-contract, the construction is yet to start. Okay, your contracts director giving you big bunch of contracts and telling you to review. Okay, you open the contract straight away. So let us start finding out some commercial risk in a pre-contract. So first, you will look into the advance payment provision maybe. So you will look whether there is an advance payment provision or not. If not, that is the risk, because for your initial mobilization, you are not getting money. As a contractor, you have to fund yourself for initial mobilization. That's a big amount of money. That's a commercial risk you can identify during pre-contract. One more example, LD clauses. LD amount, that also an amount which impact your final contract price or cash flow. You have to look that also. Secondly, you have to look the payment terms. So normally, as per FIDIC form of contract, payment term is basically 28 days for certificate and 56 days for the payment. So you know that in 56 days you will get money. But what if in the contract they wrote like 90 days for the payment? That's the big risk for you, because those once you did the work today, you will be getting paid after 90 days. So that means for 90 days you have to pay your laborers, you have to pay your employees, you have to pay rent to the equipments, vehicles, everything. You have to purchase material without money for 90 days. That also a financial risk or commercial risk which you can identify in during pre-contract, that means before signing the contract. Again, one more risk I would tell you, financial stability of the client. That also a matter. You know, there are many clients, I don't want to specify names, who are very bad in paying the contractors, and there will be continued delay in payment, and there will be partial payment. So these things you should be careful before you sign the contract. Then cash flow issues. When you're looking at your project progress and milestone, you have to see how my cash flow will be impacted. So basically, guys, this is like you're foreseeing the risk, because risk or accident, you know that there is, and it's all about how you foresee those risks, and then only you can take some mitigation. Okay, so when you travel in a motorcycle, there could be a chance for accident. That's the reason you wearing a helmet. So only when you know the risk, then only you can take the mitigation. So when you look into financial and commercial risk, any risk or any adverse event or impact that could affect your cash flow or a blood of project as called money is called a financial or commercial risk. Now we explain about the things that you should look into when you're reviewing the contract. Forget about the review the contract. Imagine you moving to the post contract. There also you have to manage the risk. In the first instance, when you're reviewing the contract, you identify the risk and you mitigate it. Risk is not stopping there. In post contract also, there will be risk. Budget overrun issues. It's one of the very classic example for the cost or commercial risk in the construction stage. Wastage issue, productivity issue, abortive issues, progress related issues, and payment to the subcontractor underperformance, and subcontractors payment terms. Your payment term will be like 28 days and subcontractor asking 14 days payment. That's also a risk. And budget issues, of course, you know that you will be having some budget issues because no projects completed on budget. Every time there will be changes and there will be unforeseeable issues you have to face. So there will be budget issue in which you are to ready with cost reports, CVR, CP, CTC, EVA, everything. So what I'm concluding basically, in beginning of the project and also after the project, when it started, also you have to be ready with risk analysis, risk mitigation, and management. Guys, in this financial and commercial, what I explained basically main points only. There could be hundreds of other issue based on country to country and place to place also, because tax things also something that matters, and adverse condition also matters. So blood of the contract, which is money, we covered. So what is next? When blood is recovered, next is contractual risk. Commercial risk is all about the money. Now let us go to contractual risk. I have already told in my first CPD, contract is the backbone of the project. When something happened to the contract, it's gone, everything is being impacted. It will bend your project. When your backbone is gone hit, it bend your project. So contractual risk also very important when you're reviewing the contract and when you manage the contract. So let us start in studying in a way how to review this risk or identify this risk in the first instance. Like imagine you had given with a contract to review and you start review. So now you know how to review the commercial risk, and you identified commercial risk. You open the Excel and you wrote down all the commercial risk. Now your turn to look into contractual risk. What are the contractual risks? Because guys, uh, when you systematically start one by one, first your eyes will scan for this financial risk. So you start with financial risk. Let us see what is the financial risk for this contract. So your eyes will be suddenly going to those points which you have to focus. Once you're done with those risks, now your eye has to go to second part, which is contractual risk. Contractual risk is always, it could be many contractual issues, something with the clauses, something with the liability, something with the indemnities, something with the insurance, some with the guarantees, some with the third party risk, termination process, unclear process, ambiguities, everything there will be in contractual risk. And now let us touch base like at least the main points. So ambiguity in contract terms or unclear terms in contract. So again, one more thing, ambiguity and discrepancy will be there. So first you'll see ambiguity in the contract. If you read the terms, if you're not understanding, don't wait. Ask the consultant or ask the guy who drafted, what do you mean by this? I couldn't, this is my interpretation. Am I correct or not? In my view, if you're not understanding some terms in the contract, don't feel shy to ask. You have to ask and confirm, dear client or consultant, in my understanding, this is the meaning of this clause. Am I correct or not? Let him tell you is correct or not. Because when you go with your own assumptions, there will be chances like in post contract stage, you interpreting something else and he interpreting something else, and that will potentially cause a dispute or conflict. So in when you're reading the contracts, As I said, contract, any document, express term, implied terms, whatever, when you're reading those things, if you find something ambiguous, ask them. If you don't understand, ask them. Get clarified before you enter. So that's the first thing. And secondly, discrepancy of document. If you find different information about same fact in different document in different ways. So in BOQ, it says something. In specification, it says something else. In drawing, it says something else. So this thing, you find something like this, attend immediately. What to do with this, guys? Ask him. Dear consultant, A, B, C, D. What should I do now? Which is the priority documents? Then they may say, dear contractor, this priority document, you follow that. Then you should say, yes, priority document is there. But again, what should I do? What should I do? Which should I do? Because in priority documents 1.5, it's explained and mutually explanatory clause is there. So in that perspective, you what if you tell me like this is what I meant. So if you find some discrepancy, address it immediately. So these 2 points are basically what it's been wrote in the contract, what is expressly stated in the contract. So when you eventually, if you're a contracts manager, you will be reading line by line and word by word. And if you find something discrepancy or ambiguity, you have to clear that before signing the contract. Now there is third party risk. I am not sure whether I explained about the privity of contract. So in a contract between two parties, only these two party can sue each other. So you have to check the third party risk, how it's been addressed, and any damages caused by a third party, how it's addressed. Because imagine you are a contractor, there is one more contractor is working there, and he come and damage you. How are you going to, you know, cover that risk? Not just physical risk I'm talking about. If that contractor cause a consequential, incidental, or any other punitive damage, what? How are you going to clear that? How the contract will indemnify me from those risks? That also you have to check. Third party risks are very important because that is somewhere hidden in the contract. You cannot find when you see the words, you will not be able to see those phrases or wording. But eventually, there is a third party. So you should ask, like, how do you, dear client or consultant, I mean, how you can indemnify from this, this third party, and when you nominate someone, how his contract will indemnify from his damages. And if there's a nomination, client is asking you to appoint a contractor under your paper, and at that point, how his contract or his act will indemnify you. That means save you from his mistakes. That also you have to check. So ambiguity, discrepancy, and third party are like these things are hidden somewhere actually, guys. So the hidden points you should pull out and resolve it before you enter into the contract, so that there will not be any dispute. Then termination clauses in the contract, because terminations, like you cannot expect always the contract will go smoothly. There will be always chances, like if you go to adverse. When you go to adverse, how you going to mitigate, or I would say, how are you going to administrate those stage? Those things are because termination means the last stage. You are basically like saying, instead of saying handshaking, you literally saying some, or you projecting bad impact each other. There will not be any coordination or cooperation after that. In that perspective, how are you going to handle that? We can be optimistic, like say there will not be any issue, we will be safe, we will be very happy, we'll be collaborating. No, there will be chances in that chance stage when things are gone wrong and everything adverse impacts are bad. At that stage, how are you going to mitigate? What is the impact of the in both pre and post, and how are you going to mitigate those things? I'm not limiting termination. You have to check suspension clause also, because these clauses are the most negative clauses, I would say. Because remaining all like payment, contracts, quality, time, everything are like the progressing part. But when it comes to negative part, how are you going to deal? That's the very important things, because we cannot stop the negative impacts. But again, at that point, what did we do? That you have to check. Okay. Now let us see indemnity liability things. I'm sure, like you might have heard of this indemnity and liability. In prima facie, you shouldn't see this indemnity, but you have to sneak into documents to see indemnity and liability. Liability means the obligation you own to the contract or client. So you have to limit the liability. You cannot keep the liability open liability. Like my contract is 1 million, but my liability 100 million. No chance. You are entering the contract to do a work for 1 million, and maximum amount the client will pay you is 1 million. So your liability cannot be unlimited. You have to make sure there is a limit for your liability. Sneak through your contracts, look into documents, look into words, and see what is the liability under this contract. If it's 100 percentage, I'm okay. 10 million is my contract value, 10 million is my liability, I'm fine. I don't have an issue. But if something they keep unlimited liability, that is something I cannot agree. So first, you have to look into the liability and see what is the liability they're giving. And you also have to see, if you are a contractor, you have to see whether the client is asking you to cover or take liability for indirect damages. Contractual damages, which is direct damages, you can cover, but indirect damages, you cannot take the liability, but same time, you may can indemnify them. So now I'm going to indemnify. Guys, these terms are sometimes a bit complicated, but after the session, when you open your contract and see this liability indemnify parts, you will understand what I exactly mean by this. So what I mean by indemnity? Indemnity means, dear contractor, you come and do the work, but you have to ensure you should indemnify. That means keep me safe from your mistake, your subcontractor mistake, or your supplier mistake. That should not come to me. For an example, if contractor is not paying subcontractor and subcontractor is not paying supplier, and these they should not, the supplier or subcontractor should not file a case against the employer. So indemnity both ways. It's not one way. Both ways it has to ensure one party should indemnify other party from his mistakes. Similarly, client should indemnify the contractor also from his employees or his team or other subcontractor, other contractor, or whatever you call. Okay, that's that basically the essence of indemnity. Now, when you open the contract, you will be looking to LD, because that's not just commercial, that's a contractual risk also. You have to see what is the amount of LD he going to put on me in case of delay. In the worst case scenario, if I delay the project, how much is the amount he going to put on me? Guys, sometimes some clients will put unreasonable LD actually, because if you because you're sure, like when somebody putting unreasonable delay, you should tell them that this is not possible. Like imagine somebody putting for 10 million project, somebody putting 1 million LD for the day. That is unbelievable. You cannot do that. So you have to check that LD figure and ensure it at least 25% is fine for me, but not like you ask 1 million per day or half million per day for the small project. So this thing, considering the contract price and duration, you have to ensure LD is reasonable. Okay, if LD is not reasonable, what you do eventually, you will take the risk into your cost. You will increase your cost for sure, because if you're 100% sure about, imagine a small short duration project and they're putting LD like anything, you know that eventually there will be it'll be delay. So that risk you will estimate and put in your price. That's it. Okay, and there's the last something called insurance and terms. So insurance is basically a waterproof, or I would say a safety jacket for you for many risks which would eventually impact your project. So check your insurance is the requirement what employer asking. Guys, I've seen sometimes they're asking data management security insurance, cyber security insurance. So if it's not reasonable, you should tell them at that moment, like guys, I cannot get all those insurances because now I know the market. I don't get this. Okay, the work insurance or like planned insurances, automobile insurance, PI insurance, that's I can provide. But like somebody asked reputation damage insurance, like security insurance, data insurance, record insurance, property insurance, contractors document insurance, many insurance they would sometimes ask. So that point you check and tell them this is not possible to get me what I can do. Same way, this guarantees they asking for performance security. What is the percentage of performance security asking? Are they asking like 20% performance security or 30% security or advance payment guarantee? How much they asking? Retention amount, how much they holding for that? And can I get the money released immediately? Then the clauses that how the breach clauses drafted also you have to check. So third party risk, ambiguity, termination clauses, indemnity, liability, LD, performance security, insurance, and the force majeure clauses. Force majeure or frustration are not in your control, but there's chances for that also. You cannot say the world will be same today and after 1 year. So to foresee those things, we let be optimistic, but same time, what if a war is being started? Or what if a natural calamity happened or a sanction happened? At that stage, when go to force majeure or a frustration, what would we do? If that is addressed in the contract, if not, you have to tell them, dear, this two adverse impact that should make come is not addressed in a contract. We have to address to make both party safe. Now let's go to legal and regulatory risk. Legal and regulatory risk is why important because the two points like commercial and contractual, we always have a remedy within the contract because it's in our control. When I say our control, it's within the control of the party. But something happened against the law that is going away from our control. It go to the court statutory requirement. So that's the reason we ought to ensure legal complaints or risk if something is there that should be identified. For example, law. You have to check something in the contract against the law or not. If Saudi, there's a Sharia law, you're something drafting something that's against the law, you have to find out. Eventually, for this section, you can review, but again, always better to get it reviewed by your legal team also because they are the SME on this, and always better to get it reviewed by legal team because sometimes you don't know all the law in the country, but the lawyer will know all the law in the country. They will know it's against the public interest or not. So those points eventually you can point out about the license, whether the contractor have a license or not, they're a subsidiary or not, or they have complaints with the law, or they have any breach history of breach of law. These things you have to identify. One more thing, when you are accused, one thing you have to look into is as part of risk. Eventually, whichever explained that going to be taken care of you as well as legal. But in legal part, you have to think one thing. If the contractor or an employer have or does have the history of arbitration, claims, that all risk actually. If you look in legal perspective, if one contractor, they always have the history of this court issues, litigation, arbitration. That's the risk for you. When you look in the contracts, not just the contract, the second part of the I would say, because legal complaints like public interest or a law of the land, that of course you have to ensure. But same time, you have to look into this second part, which is for second layer of the contract, whether this contractor or employer had history of legal issues, because that eventually a risk for you. If in every time the contract is submitting claim and that go to arbitration dispute, that's definitely a risk for you. So when you review the contract, you have to ensure this guy does not have those impacts. Okay. Now let us move to, because we open the contract, we check commercial, we check contractual, we check legal. Now there is operational risk. When you open the contract, you sign the contract, you have no idea what are the risks going to be, because you cannot, when you start the contract, You may say there could be a delay, there could be this issue, there could be that issue, but unless you start the contract, you cannot say this will be a not of them, because common operation is risk are delay, resource shortage, supply chain issues, maybe equipment failure, scope gap will be there, maybe unclear specification, shortage of material maybe, or maybe operational issues, workfront issues, site issues, access issues. These issues you will understand only when you start the project. It's very risky part actually, and these risks contribute a lot into cost and time. The worst part is like you cannot guess this risk in the very beginning. If you can guess, you will be ready with like shield and armor. Come, let's fight. But many events or risk events under this head, you can anticipate only when the project start, or maybe after a few months the project started. Maybe you can say delays. When you look into the program, you as a contractor, you will prepare the program and you will be very optimistic you can finish the program. So you cannot anticipate a delay when you review the contract. LD part, yes, but delay you cannot. And resource shortage also, because when you submit the tender, you already obtained the subcontractor quotation, supplier quotation, everything is ready with you. And you know that already you have labors, and you will be very optimistic to obtain subcontractor labors or a labor supply. And you cannot say, but maybe if you have a lesser labor available, you can mark it as a risk. Dear manager, as per our internal labors, this much only, but as per the requirement or our tender program, we have to anticipate or we have to provide this much labor, so we should be ready with them. That's the point you can do. Then supply chain disruption, unless you place the PO and unless they start delivering or manufacturing, then only you can say whether it's going to disruption or not. Only thing what you can do from your past experience, you can say this contractors or subcontractors, we had a bad experience in terms of the delivery or in terms of time delivery. Or you can say, you can check with your procurement team and say, ask like, what do you think in your in the previous budget, how it was when you prepare a KPI or a quality quantitative analysis, how was supplier performance, how was our payment mechanism. So if you think, if you ask a contractor, if you are a bad paymaster because you're paying, delaying the payment to the contractor or subcontractor or to supplier, that eventually a risk. So that case you can consider that risk. Equipment failure, you cannot guess that, but again you can keep in the post corner stage potential equipment failure, but it's very difficult to guess how often equipment will failure. Even we're going to explain how to analyze this point in detail in upcoming slides, but I'm explaining the heads only. Then scope gap, which is you will understand only when you start working on it. Then you will say specification, say this drawing says this, now you ask me something else. In shop drawing they will comment something else, material submittal they comment something else. Those all things you will come to or come across only when you start the program. Similarly, some unclear specification requirement also will be there. So operation risk, which is very critical risk, unfortunately very difficult to guess also. You can guess it, but may not be like always 100% accurate. Now let's look into a new risk, which was not in the, I would say 10 years before, it was not very significant. But now this risk is very significant because technical or technological risk. Cyber security risk and technological failure is like a big burden nowadays. Confidentiality issues, many problems. And nowadays, intellectual property rights and the IT rights, confidentiality rights, and clients are very peculiar about that. One thing you have to make sure when you review the contract, your rights, your confidentiality right, your IT rights, or your patent rights, or your cybersecurity rights are protected in the contract. Contract should address those, or contract should have clauses to ensure that your documents are protected, your confidentiality is protected, your patent are protected, your IPs are protected, and your reputation is protected, and technological failures are identified and addressed. See, nowadays, many hackers sneaking, many but some there are some project softwares which you install that's eventually making a huge impact in the project that destroying everything. So when something happened like that, how are you going to impact? Is guys, just imagine you are doing a very confidential project with the ministry, with the defense or not, defense or maybe nuclear project. In that term, it's very, very important to ensure you indemnify the client and client indemnify you in terms of technological risk, especially cybersecurity risk, documental risk, and now AI has a huge do and how those things going to implement your project. You have to make sure this is not going to implement my this is not going to use in my project. I don't want your some your some new software application for me without my permission. And you will have a document control system. I don't want you to unilaterally control the document control system. I also want to see assess. I don't also want to see the editing and the deleting processes. So you have to make sure, because now, as after the corona, everything is through e-channels. Documents are very less. So if a document management system, say Equinox or a Unifier, if it's unilaterally operating by the client, he can do anything on that. So you have to ensure that's not the case. That risk you have to cover. Now let us move to environmental and social risk, which is mainly health safety issues, environmental impact you give into a contract, and market economic fluctuation that could cause, and also fluctuation of material costs, economic downturn, reputational risk actually. All these are social and environmental risk. For example, if asbestos are there in your land become contaminated. So when you start a soil investigation, you find some contamination, you have to ensure that is being addressed in your contract. And client should ensure that the asbestos should be removed or taken out safely as per the protocol or environmental protocol, and that shouldn't impact your project. Basically, your part as a contractor is basically if there is an environmental or social risk, that should be addressed by client, because clients, they are the best party to do that, because you as a poor contractor came to do the work, not to spend your time and money for this social environmental risk. So ideally, client has to provide you environmental permit to start the work. Just imagine if you're developing some places and there is a mangrove or there's a palm tree and client telling you to cut and remove it. That's a risk for you, because it's not just risk. It's not just about cutting and removing. There is an approval layers, environmental approval, some different ministries, everything is there. That's the cost impact also. And when you remove one mangrove, you have to replace three mangrove also. So there are many layers of issue will be there. So when you find something social risk in your scope or anywhere in the document, so if you think when you read something, you think that I can give you some example like removing of palm, or uh, when you compacting, there is a if there is some species like lizard or something is there, or when you excavating, if you find some snakes or something, these all environmental impacts actually. So if your scope is excavation, you have to foresee when you find some environmental issues or social issues, how are you going to mitigate that? Imagine when you start excavate, you find asbestos, what are you going to do? Or when you excavate, you find some fossils, what are you going to do? That thing should be in your mind. You have to put a small clause in there. Any enforceable condition shall be subject to cost and time impact. You are safe in that perspective. You can put contractual clause and make sure it's safe. Okay, that's basically environmental and social risk. Now let us go to last risk, which is political and regulatory risk. It's mainly like the I would start with the regulators first. When there's a new law is implemented, what you should do? So you start the project, and I mean, you are not foreseeing any risk of law now. You think law will not change, everything will be fine. But what if there is a no law implemented? What would you do that stage? because you don't have anything to do if it's not addressed in the contract. So make sure, guys, you are to make sure implementation of any law, statutory decision, decree, all those is a risk for you if you're not addressed. So when you sneak into documents and you find there is nothing drafted in the contract against a potential new law implementation, you are to ensure that is being covered under the contract. I'm sure if you are aware of the FIDIC form of contract, this is when a new law is implemented, it's a cost and time as per FIDIC. Similarly, in your contract, when you review, it is not that's the risk for you because you're not pricing for that, and you haven't considered a potential time impact for that. So that thing you want to keep in your mind when you read in the contract. If there is no mitigation or measure for the new law, that's a risk for you. And political thing which is beyond your control actually, in a way that is addressed in force majeure or employer's risk. But again, that's not addressed the war, hostile, or communal issues. If that is not being addressed in the contract as employer risk, you may need to address that. Guys, I would appreciate if you could just go to FIDIC and see what are the employer risk in the contract. If those risks are not identified as employer risk, that's a political risk for you. If not under contractors, sorry, not under employers risk. So when you review the contract and you see those risks like riots, fires, violence, communal issues, radiations, does not be identified as employer risk in your contract, immediately tell the client, yeah, client, it's not my risk actually. It's beyond my control. So this has to be taken away from me, or you take it. Or if you want to me to take it, I'm eventually going to load my praise on that. I will going to praise the risk and I'm going to load it. But ideal case, I would say don't take it under you. You have to transfer those risks to the employer. So guys, financial and commercial risk, contractual risk, legal and regulatory risk, operational risk, technical risk, environment and social risk, and political risks are explained in detail. Now let us see. Now we know the risk actually. Okay, we are very clear about the risk. Now potentially when you open the contract, I'm sure like at least this thing will flash through your mind. At least you know where to start and where to end and how to identify. So identification and assessment is the very key part of the risk. You know the risk. I'm 100% sure you know the risk, and you know the types of risk also. Now let us identify and assess the risk. And why we want to identify and assess the risk? Only when you assess the risk, then only you will understand the criticality of the risk. Only when you understand the criticality of risk, then only you can take the mitigation action. Okay, just one thing I want to tell you, like I'm traveling from Dubai to Abu Dhabi or Abu Dhabi to Dubai. I'm finding I identify risk actually. I identify a risk of potential traffic. So traffic is a risk for me because if there's a traffic, I will not be able to reach my place on time. So time is a risk for me. So I identify the risk actually. There could be many risks. I'm talking about only one risk, which is the traffic. So I'm sure what to do now. Since there's a risk, there's a chance I may reach my destination. I may not reach my destination on time. So this is the point where you would think of mitigation or management, risk management. What I can do, I would say I can start earlier. Okay, or I would say I will take a taxi and I will get down at some metro. The metro I will go straight away so that there's no traffic. Or may I would say I will travel like after or after peak hours maybe if possible. So this way we will have different option for a risk. What we should do is basically choose the best solution for that. So in my example, like I'm traveling to Dubai and traffic is my risk. So this I identified because of my experience. Or maybe In my past experience, or last week, I was going and I come across some traffic, or maybe brainstorming. I'll ask somebody, or maybe there will be some people traveling every day between Dubai and Abu Dhabi. I call them, dear buddy, what do you think? How is that thing? Was there be a traffic, or there will be no traffic? So he will give you his expert judgment. No, brother, there will be a traffic from 9 to 10. You may travel after 10 o'clock so that you will not find traffic, or else you have to travel early morning, there will not be traffic. So he will give me his expert judgment. Again, I will check like what to do with this process of traveling, how to travel, or maybe I will keep 140 kilometer per speed so that I can save that money, so save that time in my traveling, and that traffic delay will be covered in that stage. Okay, so what I explained basically, yeah, example from our day-to-day life. Similarly, in construction also, we have to think in this perspective. When you have something as a risk identification, you have to brainstorm basically. It's a cross-functional operation. It's not just one guy has to do it. Eventually, a contracts team will be doing it as a lead, but you have to check with different department. What are the operational risk? What are the contractual risk? What are the commercial risk? Maybe SCM risk, as called supply chain management risk, procurement risk, or legal risk. Because as a contracts manager, you will know maybe commercial and contractual risk in detail, but remaining other risks you might not know. So you have to check with your different department, development department, your NOC department, your permitting department, your authority department, your environmental department, all department you have to check like, guys, what do you think? What thing? So they will share their experience and risk which they faced in previous project, or they will definitely show you, I have faced this issue in my last project, I have faced this issue in my this project. So that everything you have to list out, and you have to ensure checklist. The second point is checklist basically. So in previous slide we explained all type of risk. As part of checklist, you have to ensure you covered all these risk heads, and you addressed under each risk head all the potential risk. Then historical data analysis, purely based on your experience and past data. As I said, when you work as a cross-functional team, different teams will be coming with different experience, and their experience they will share with you. I faced this issue in my past project. I faced this issue. I faced this issue. So you can take those or list down those risks, whichever they shared, and you can connect those risks with your project. You can check if somebody telling in my previous project, I have to remove some mangroves, but authority make a big issue, a big fines. So you can take that into consideration, and you can check whether I have mangrove removal is my scope or not. Or if you're road or rail contractor, and when you do compaction for the rail to install, there will be many species passing through like in desert and all. You have to make sure how do you mitigate that stage. Is something to happen to this living species, what was the risk, how authority going to fine you? Those things you can take into consideration. Similarly, with this client in my previous project, I faced a lot of delay in payment. There's a risk in terms of commercial to address it. Somebody will tell, with this client I have an arbitration in my previous budget with my previous company. That was a risk. So this way you identify checklist, and based on historical data you list out and identify all the risks basically. Now, expert judgment. So in my experience, when I'm traveling from Abu Dhabi to Dubai, I will call my friends who are regularly traveling between these places, like regular travelers between Dubai and Abu Dhabi, so that I can ask, like, he will be very expert. He will know when will be the traffic, he will know where is the camera, he will be know where is the signal, everything he know. So this expert will be giving his proper judgment about the risk. So sometimes you will appoint expert, legal or risk expert. They will review the contract and will tell you these are the risk in the contract. Now you have to identify. I mean, they will identify the risk and give it to you. And now your turn to assess those risks. So what I explained basically purely the identification mechanism. If you're a post contract quantity surveyor, and you start your project. Okay, in first month of your project, you prepare a cost report, and when you compare the total cost against the budget for that month, when you see that is overrun, there's a risk for you. Immediately you have to identify those risks and you want to address that risk. Basically, just an example for you to how we identify the risk. Okay, and when you think your subcontractor is underperforming, that's also a risk. You identify the risk from their performance and progress. Okay, when supply is delaying, that also a risk. If supply is non-responsive during the stake delivery, that also a risk. You identify the risk basically from your past experience maybe or current experience maybe. So this is all mechanism. How do you identify the risk? Now there is two methodology how we should assess the risk. Okay, you identify the risk, fine. So, but now how we going to take action against the risk? You cannot live with the risk. You have to do something. As I said, like when you're traveling the or riding a bicycle, you know that when you fell down, you will get hit or you will get injured. So as a mitigation, you wear helmet. Similarly, now your turn to wear the helmet for your project. Like you have to wear, you have to waterproof, you have to safeguard your project against the risk. That is basically qualitative. This that's called assessment basically. So assessment basically is three types, two types, sorry, qualitative assessment and quantitative assessment. In quantitative assessment, we will have a fact or a figure with us. Whereas in qualitative assessment, we will not be having a figure. It's all about the assumptions or about the intangible and items. I will give you a very small example, okay? How you differ between qualitative and quantitative, okay? So one supplier or one subcontractor you appointed, okay? And you decide to do a quantitative assessment for him. So you have to do a quantitative assessment for him. So what you basically do in qualitative assessment, you will check say three parameters: his performance, his delivery time, after delivery services. So in qualitative assessment, you will put for against 3 points: is delivery good or maybe best, good or bad, three criteria. In qualitative, you will have only three criteria: good, bad, or best. So against the delivery, you will put good, bad, or maybe best, something like that. In delivery time, you will put good, bad, or best, something like that. And similarly, for the after service, you will put good, bad, or best. So basically, there is no amount, there is no figure against that. Instead of that, you're putting a quality measurement for that. Or sometimes you may put 30 percentage, 40 percentage, or 20 percentage. For example, against delivery, if is delivering on time, you will put 100 percentage. If 1 day delay, you will put the 20 percentage, something like that. But when it comes to quantitative analysis, you are to put a figure for that. I will tell you how to get figure also. So this supplier is delivering 10 times. Okay, there's 10 delivery from the supplier. You will check how many deliveries was on time. Okay, you will check how many deliveries was on time. So out of 10, if 10 delivery was on time, you will put a score 100 against him, or you will put say we considering only three parameters. Okay, so I would say scoring will be 150, 25, and 25. So against 50, he's all the delivery on time, you will put 50, exact 50 you will put. If out of 10 he is delivering only 5 on time and 5 after 1 day, you will calculate that figure actually. 5 into 100 percentage and 4 into 50%, 75 percentage. So you will have a figure for that. You will put that figure against that. And second part, after service, delivery time, against all those things, you will put a figure. Okay, now let us explain about subcontractor and service providers basically. Similarly, you can do the same thing for the risk also. Say budget overrun issue. There is a budget overrun issue. You prepare a cost report and you identified that there is a budget overrun issue. The cost was really high, but the progress was really bad. And you know when progress is very bad and cost is very high, eventually you are above the budget or you spend more than the budget in that month. So in qualitative analysis, what you do basically, you identify the risk and you will put as a high risk. That's the only thing. Whereas when you quantitative analysis, you put a figure against the risk, and when you get a figure, then only you will put a rank against the risk. I'm sure it's confusing. Let me put it this way. So budget overrun issue. Okay. So there is two criteria: chance for occurrence and severity. This is the main criteria for a ranking of the risk in quantitative analysis. As I said, in qualitative, we'll put like high risk, medium risk, that's it. But in quantitative analysis, we need a figure. So the first criteria is the likelihood of occurrence. So budget overrun. What is the likelihood of occurrence? When you prepare a CTC, if the cost is really high, the likelihood of occurrence you will put out of 10, maybe 9 or 8. You will put 10 also, because if you left this contract unaddressed, or if you left this risk unaddressed, your contract going to collapse. You will be ending up with more money than budget. So out of 10, I will put 10 out of it. And then, so likelihood of occurrence is 10 for me, because it's a very big risk. It's occurred already. Second factor, severity of the risk. Imagine what will happen if the cost over the budget. It's a big impact, because maybe that will impact your profit also. So that's really critical for me. I will put 9 or maybe 10, or I will put 8 also. Then 9 into 10 or 9 into 10 into 10. 100 is my score for that. Really critical risk. If I'm not addressing this, it's going to drain my money. This way we will do quantitative assessment. When you have this figure in your hand, so budget over an issue, likelihood of occurrence, we will put 10 score out of 10, and the criticality or severity, I put 10 out of 10, because it's very critical issue. So 100 is my score and it's very severe. So now that's the turn we have to decide what to do now. That is called action points or risk avoidance, risk management. What we will do, maybe we will increase the productivity, we will train to the employees, we will do more negotiation with the subcontractor, reduce the cost, or we will ask for advance payment, or we will try to complete as early as possible, at least save some money in terms of prelims. So many action we will take, but actions are started when we identify the risk and we assess the risk. So risk matrix basically based on the severity and occurrence, we will rank all the risk, and that list is called risk register or risk matrix in different terminology. So I explained like how to identify the risk. Now let us see what is action as management or risk management as part of risk measurement, what we should do in both pre and post contract stage, which called risk management strategies. Okay, so there are different methodologies to manage risk, which are risk avoidance, risk reduction, risk acceptance, risk sharing, and risk transfer. We will take, this 5 points are very important. When you review the contract and you identify the risk in the contract, you just imagine you start reviewing the contract and you identify the different risk even under commercial, contractual, legal. You listed all in the Excel and you ranked against the quantitative assessment. You put severity, ranking, everything. Now you have to put a mitigation for that. That we have 5 mechanisms to manage the risk basically, which are avoidance, reduction, acceptance, sharing, and transfer. Let us see one by one what is that. Okay, we'll start with risk avoidance. So that means how to avoid the risk. Okay, avoid the risk means how we can eliminate a potential risk. Let me go back to my first example, which I was telling. I have a plan to travel from Abu Dhabi to Dubai. So I foresee a risk of traffic. How can I avoid that risk? So one possibility basically, I can travel early. I can travel before the peak traffic hours. Second thing, I can travel after my after peak hours. Or maybe if I want to travel in peak hours, I can take a taxi maybe. I can go up to metro station. From metro, I can go to my place without any traffic. So I have three options basically. See, I have three options for one risk. But choose the right risk is basically completely depends on your intent, your project requirement, and your contract aim, I would say. So in my case, if I want to reach the destination exactly at 9 o'clock, I have two options left actually. I cannot start late because I have to reach 9:30. So I have two options basically. Maybe I can start early or I can take a taxi till metro and then I go to my destination. So now I have to check the cost impact and time impact, which is good for me. If I'm taking a taxi, maybe I have to pay 100 dirham for him. Plus, I have to pay some money for the what do you call that metro also. Maybe for metro, I need to walk also. So cost impact, time impact, you have to consider. Whereas if I start early, I can reach on time. I maybe put petrol for 100 dirham only, maybe 50 dirham also I put. So, but I have convenience also. I can reach till the office in my car. I can park there also. So convenience, cost, time. See, I would say I may start early in my car so that I can reach on time in my car with full convenience. So, considering different factors, we will choose the mechanism to cover the risk. So, now let us put in our construction project these how to apply these things. So, you are reviewing the contract, okay? You review the contract and you've seen that there is no provision for the advance payment. It's a big risk for sure. Advance payment provision is not there. That means initial mobilization, you have to find money as a contractor. That's eventually a big risk because contractors never work on their money. And as a client, they have to pay money for the initial mobilization for sure. But if that provision is not there in the contract, that's the risk in terms of cash flow. So this is your chance to think, what would I do now? Should I avoid the risk? Should I reduce the risk? Should I accept it and move forward? Should I share it? Should I transfer it? Okay. One thing I would tell you, may not sometimes all five may not be applicable, but at least four, three will be applicable. You have to choose the best pick. So first, risk avoidance. What you can do basically, dear employer, there is no advance payment provision, and that going to hit my cash flow. I would appreciate if you give me an advance payment. You can request. So what's the first thing? You have to request for that. Then risk reduction. So at least you should reduce the impact of the risk. So that what you can do, basically reduce the impact of risk. To reduce the impact of risk, you can maybe ask for 50% advance payment instead of 10%. You may ask for 5%, or else, or else you can rephrase or sorry, resequence your work to show some progress in the first month and get some money. Or you can what you call that, you can resequence your you sequence your your purchasing, okay, so that you get the material. Maybe you ask for material offsite provision and you said, dear employer, you're not giving me anywhere material on-site provision, sorry, advance payment provision. I have some material, it's constructing in somewhere else. You give me offsite provision for that. At least I will that reduce my burden of financial burden will be reducing. So, or you will ask, dear employer, you then it's a big amount of money for me. You do one thing, you give me porta cabin and things. At least that will eventually help me. Then risk acceptance. So we check avoidance, we check reduction also. Now we check what is risk acceptance. Okay, you request employer, he said, no, I'm not giving you money. Then you ask for the photo gap, he said, no, I'm not going to give you. So now you have to live with the risk. But what you can do basically to, for, as I said, initial mobilization fee will be very high because you have to mobilize your plan, equipment, photo gap, everything you have to arrange. Take that money into account. Imagine that full money you taking from the bank, how much amount of money you will be paying back to the bank as a interest, everything. That money you load into your tender or bid. This you can do only when you review the contract or terms of contract in while tendering. Okay, so you have to consider that risk in the project. You can tell us, dear employer, if he asks, you can tell also, you're not paying me for this initial mobilization. So eventually I have to go to a bank or a financial institution, get some money, and I have to pay the interest also. So I'm going to load that. This is called acceptance and move forward. Risk sharing, it's already kind of I explained. You take some portion, like as per our reduction, as I said, you give me pota cap or something, or you give me some 5%. That's also risk sharing. I'll give you one more example in risk sharing. Okay, there will be some items we importing from other countries, and normally if you is a government client or a well reputed client, they will have good connection with the authority. So for employer, it will be easy for them to get custom clearance. And some countries like in Ethiopia and all, client will get relaxation of tax also. If the contractor is procuring or importing from outside the country, there's a big big tax actually. But when employer is procuring, if principal owner is employer, there is a chance of getting tax relaxation. In that time, you will share the risk of importing and clearance. So what you do, you will wisely choose the Incoterms. So supplier responsibility will be up to here only. What you call that? Up to port. From port, the responsibility will hand over to the employer, maybe as a material offset, onsite, whatever you call. Okay. When risk transfer, basically you completely transferring the risk to the person who can handle it best way. In my similar experience example, where employer will get a better upper hand in getting clearance of the goods and all, you can tell, dear employee, you take the responsibility because I'm transferring the risk to you. I'm not pricing the risk, I'm transferring the risk to you, because risk always has to give to the person who can better, or you can handle it better way. Because risk like authority requirement, access, building permit, contractor is not the right guy. It's better to do with the employer actually, because they have prepared the concept drawing, all the drawings, everything. They submit to approval for the authority, and those better employee is a better person to handle those things. So what we do basically, we'll transfer that risk to the employer. Okay, so this is basically how we mitigate and how we choose a right methodology against each risk. Okay, so I hope from the very beginning explain the risks to mitigation process and choosing the right strategy to mitigate the risk. We covered holistically, and I hope you will have a understanding about different risk elements, how to identify those, how to assess the risk, and how to manage by avoiding, reducing, accepting, sharing, or transferring. So guys, in this 1 hour, we have a time constraint actually. So we will be conducting detailed section. I mean, we already promised you actually. In last first class, we promised you like there will be series of session contracts. So this is our third section, and we'll be going in detail section by section, which we feel important for you in terms of better contract administration and also for RICS. Okay, so this point we already explained in detail, and thank you very much for attending session. And this is our third session, and we can see many guys are already participated in many sessions, and I can see same names over here also. Thank you all of you for joining the session. And I'm just concluding now with with a very short snippet of that, like risks are inventable but manageable. Risks are there. You cannot avoid. We cannot live without risk, but always there is a chance you can manage it, you can mitigate it, and success of the project, it completely depends on how you identify the risk, be it a pre or post contract, and how do you manage that risk. Okay, I hope you obtained or got a comprehensive understanding about risk, and I hope you can apply those things in your professional life or professional work. Thank you very much, guys, for joining. Now, if you have any doubts, question, you can ask me. Thank you very much. Guys, I'm just going through this message actually. Messages I will address one by one basically. Ishan Mohammed asked, can you explain some example that you handled? Like, I think you asking about the risk which we come across. Yeah, as I said, in terms of commercial risk, we'll have cash flow issues, invoice issues, late payment, subcontract payment issues, and negotiation issues, client payment issue, delayed payment issues, retention issue, LD issues. Many risks are there. In terms of come to contractual risk, it will be like liability issues, indemnification issues, security issues, unreasonable insurance issues. Those are there actually in terms of, there are a couple of risks which I came across, not exclusive list, but I'm just explaining some major risks. Uh, Banibrata Dar asked how to calculate the risk in aspect of cost that will impact project overall cost or budget. I think I explained during this risk assessment, how do you calculate the risk? When you identify the risk, and when you score the risk, and when you take the action, that's not the end of the risk. So if you find during post contract there is a potential delay, so you identify risk event as a delay, potential delay. So potential delay means you foresee a delay. Then you, what you do basically, you will put chance of occurrence basically, and second severity, that you will put scoring. So if you're sure about delay, you will put chance of occurrence as 10 out of 10, and severity of course 10 only, because that's going to impact time and cost. Time means the time of completion, and cost means the client may impose you a delay, so that you see as a risk. So as a mitigation, you may find like increase productivity or acceleration, whatever, something you find out. But in the cost report, you are a contractor or you are a subcontractor. In your cost report, you have to price this risk basically. So delay, if you foresee a 10 days delay as part of, because eventually you will look in detail of delay quantitative way. So you identify that potential delay will be 10 days in your assessment. So 10 days into what is the delay damage, then you should tell your like if you're a contractor, you should tell your management, dear manager or dear management, there is a potential delay we identify as a risk, and severity is really high. We have some action plans like 1, 2, 3, but however, this is the amount of money we may need to find, because if 10 days delay, the client will go into impose delay damage. So 10 days into per day delay, you have to identify and give to him. Similarly, if client is delaying something, imagine you are failed to provide access to site, or you fail to provide documents or drawings on time. So instead of 1st of March, you give the drawings on 26th of March. So there's a 25 straight delay. So when, as a client QS, when you prepare the report, you should tell your management that we delayed 28 days or 25 days. Either you take a mitigation or be ready with EOT for the so potential time also, cost also. So this is the way you can start act proactively. Anandu Ramesh asked what is risk metrics. So I think I explained already how to translate risk into cost. I explained already, but the best for the reading. Thank you for the risk review ratio. So guys, you can speak now. Mic is enabled. If somebody is speaking, you can start.
Hi, Midun. I'd say, I mean, have you got a detailed risk and opportunity register that you can share with the lads, like
I
a
mean, by the way,
template or
who is this?
something like that?
Ishan. Ishan,
Yeah,
right? Speaking Ishan, right?
that's right.
Hi,
Yeah.
Ishan. Firstly,
How
thank
are
you for
you?
joining the session, and very good. Thank you for joining actually. And you're talking about the detailed risk register, right?
Yes, yeah, just a
To
template.
be, to
I
be,
know everyone deals with risk
yeah,
in day-to-day
different.
life, like but back
Yeah,
again,
yeah,
I mean, lads need to understand what the level of the risk and the likes. So whereas one of the lad has asked the question, what's the risk metric? I'd say if he goes to Google and just go and have a look, he will understand the risk metrics in terms of possibility and the probability of the risk, like where
exactly.
it weighs how far the risk needs to be allocated for each and every element of the job. But back again, I mean, it will be very useful if you have a detailed risk metrics like a template or something of that nature just to
I
have more
understand.
visibility on
I
it.
will
You know?
I will keep in mind actually because right now I have to ensure something I'm sharing is would not breach a confidentiality. So that I let
Yeah.
me do something. I will be sharing not suddenly, but in a couple of weeks, I will prepare some list like not from any project actually. I'll prepare a separate list maybe, and I can share you in our page LinkedIn page. We will share you a sample over there.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. Just generic,
I
just to
understand.
make
Yeah,
sure that the lads understand much more even depth, like
much more more so I understand because if I share you something that be easy for you to how the risk are identified, how it's been scored, and how it's been mitigated, and maybe the cost part will not be there, but rest of the part will be there.
Yeah, yeah, perfect. All right.
Will
Good
do a
stuff.
sample post definitely. Thank you for the insight. I will do that. Sarah Avda asked basically in terms of MRACS, what are the expected to show for level 1, 3? Can you provide example for each? Sarah, risk is in project finance competency, you can see risk and risk register and risk mitigation. So what you should tell, but that competency or that it's not one topic in the competency, it's just one topic in the competency. Okay, so risk and risk mitigation is one of the competency, or no, sorry, one of the topic in one competency. So in level 1 you can say you learned about the risk mitigation process, you learn about risk, basically you learn about the management risk. And level 2 you can write in your post contract stage, you identify some risk and you prepare risk register, something like that. And in level 3 you can write you identified some budget overrun issue as a risk, and you advise your management to take mitigation action for that, something like that. Then how to identify risk in the first stage. So Ragesh, in the first instance, if you want to identify the risk, so the first points which we explained: commercial, contractual, legal, social impacts, political. These, I mean, you should keep these things in your mind actually. And I would appreciate if you can prepare an Excel with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 heads and list out in experience what are the risks you come across, and you scan for that risk actually in the contract. So that's the way you should identify risk in the first instance. And again, it comes with the experience. As you review contracts day by day, it will come to you. Irshad Ahmed, there is no official WhatsApp group for us actually, but we'll be posting everything on our LinkedIn page. If you have any further question, I'm happy to
Hi,
help you and happy to answer if I know. Yes, who is this?
hi, hi, Mithun. This is Ragesh.
Uh,
Ragesh.
I can't.
Hi.
Yeah, hi Ragesh. Hi
Yeah,
Ragesh.
yeah, Mithun.
How are you,
It
Ragesh?
was, yeah, I'm fine. It was nice.
Yeah.
The webinar was very quite insightful and good thing. The only thing is just you need to give some examples of how to find out the quantitative and qualitative analysis to find out the risk register. So if you can share some examples of how to find out, that would be great.
Basically, Rakesh, thank you for joining firstly. The
Yeah,
problem, we have hardly 1 hour and I have to cover this topic also. That's the
yeah,
reason like we are a bit quick and expiring. But Rakesh, from the very first CPD, I was telling, we will be conducting CPDs like one by one. So this CPD risk was one of the topic in our second CPD. Similarly, maybe we will conduct one more CPD to explain like how to identify the risk. Like I would say like we will be opening an Excel and explaining how to do that. In upcoming CPD, definitely we do that.
okay,
Yeah.
that's great. That's great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank
thanks,
you.
thanks.
Thank you guys. Thank you for joining. If you know further question, you are free to leave. I'll be staying here for a couple of minutes to ensure all the questions are answered. And if anybody looking for MRI ACS training, we have a training also. You can approach us to the mail and to WhatsApp.
Thanks, Vinod. Thanks for your time. Appreciate that. Chat in a bit.
Thank you
Bye
very
bye.
much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.